I'm sorry, Richter.
You are sending me away.
I'm so sorry, my darling, but I have no choice.
There's always a choice. Be a Belmont.
Olrox.
It began with a scream that cut through the darkness. The night was supposed to be calm, a rare evening of warmth and laughter for a boy who barely understood the weight of his family name. Richter was just a teenager then, still growing into his body, still clumsy with the whip his father had taught him to hold. But that night, all childish innocence was burned away. The village was aflame. The air smelled of blood, wood smoke, and the sickly sweetness of death. Vampires descended like shadows given flesh, eyes glowing in the firelight, fangs dripping with hunger. And at the center of it his mother stood, armed, defiant, refusing to run. Richter would never forget the sound her sword made when it met the first vampire's neck, nor the way her voice trembled when she screamed for him to run. But he didn't run far enough. He saw it happen. The strike he couldn't block. The vampire lord. Taller, stronger, faster than anything he'd trained against, driving its fangs into her throat, the light in her eyes fading. The last thing she said to him wasn't a goodbye, but a command. Live. And carry the name Belmont. That night, Richter's world ended. And something darker took its place. The Belmonts were more than a family. They were a legend, a curse, and a promise. For centuries, they had been the first and last line of defense against the creatures of the night. But legends fade. Sad, villagers whispered that the Belmonts had brought as much destruction as they prevented. Richter had heard the rumors, seen the mistrust in people's eyes. Now, with his mother gone, he was the Belmont line. The last one, the only one. It was a crown of thorns for a boy barely into manhood. He trained until his hands blistered and bled, swinging the vampire killer whip under the cold moonlight until his arms shook. Every crack of the whip was a prayer and a promise. To his mother, to his ancestors, to himself. But beneath that determination was a gnawing fear. What if I fail? And that fear only deepened when the shadow of Dracula's forces began to stir again. To the world, Richter was the heir of a warrior dynasty. To himself, he was still the boy who couldn't save his mother. He carried himself with confidence in battle, but when the fight was over and the adrenaline faded, the cracks began to show. Sleepless nights, the sound of her last words echoing in the dark, the way he'd wake up with his fists clenched, nails digging into his palms. There were moments where the weight was too much, moments when he envied people who could just live without the burden of destiny. And yet, he was still a boy. He could laugh, he could be awkward, he could smile when Maria teased him or when Annette's voice softened in concern. But those moments were rare, and they often ended with him pulling away, afraid to let anyone too close, afraid to lose them the way he'd lost his mother. Maria Reynard was fire. Younger than Richter, but no less fierce, she challenged him, questioned him, refused to let him brood in silence. She reminded him of the life he could still live. And sometimes that annoyed him as much as it comforted him. They clashed like siblings, yet in battle, they moved as one, instinctively protecting each other's blind spots. Annette, on the other hand, was a different kind of light. Steady, warm, unshaken even in the face of darkness. She saw the boy behind the whip, the one who still carried the night of his mother's death in his heart. And she stayed. She refused to let him push her away, even when he thought he was protecting her by doing so. But relationships forged in war are complicated. Each victory they won against the Knight was paid for in blood, and every close call only made Richter more afraid of losing them. That fear became a source of tension. He wanted to keep them safe, but both Maria and Annette refused to be treated like fragile glass. The road to becoming the hero the legend spoke of wasn't paved in glory. It was built on scars. Richter learned the hard way that strength wasn't just about killing monsters. It was about surviving the aftermath, about facing the parts of himself he wanted to bury. He fought not just for revenge, but for the people who still believed in him. He fought for Maria's unshakable faith, for Annette's quiet defiance, for the promise he'd made to his mother's dying breath. In the end, Richter Belmont was not the perfect warrior. He was better. He was human, afraid, scarred, burdened, but still standing. And sometimes, that's the kind of hero the world needs most. Through each battle, each loss, and each fleeting victory, Richter transformed. Not into the unshakable hero from the games, but into something more complicated. A young man who learned that the Belmont legacy wasn't about a single person winning a war. It was about passing the fight forward, keeping the fire alive no matter how dark the night became. And perhaps that's what makes this version of Richter so compelling. He isn't untouchable. He isn't invincible. He bleeds. He doubts. He breaks. But he stands back up. Every single time. If Nocturne is about anything, it's about the space between legend and reality. About the cost of carrying a name, and the courage it takes to keep carrying it, even when the weight threatens to crush you. Richter Belmont's story is not just about killing vampires, it's about surviving yourself.